The situation in Ukraine has politicians already looking for ways to close down your options for a backup plan, close down your options for second citizenship. Today, we're going to talk about 5 changes coming to citizenship programs around the world. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And we've been telling you for years about the benefits of second citizenship. We've got plenty of episodes here on the channel, but let's briefly recap. The last 2 years should be a prime example of why you want an option. A passport you can travel on, a passport that is immune from what the government in your home country wants, the ability to invest in other countries, the ability to travel, the ability to go to a place that represents your values, that has freedom, the ability to get out if you need to. And yet, governments don't want you to have options. We have seen how the U.S. embassies, for example, around the world, even as the pandemic comes to an end, are really not opening up the very limited number of embassies where you actually can go and renounce citizenship. Legacy brand countries want to keep you in, and they're going to use the situation that's unfolding now in Ukraine as an excuse. And so here are 5 changes that I think are coming, 5 trends to be aware of. The first thing is, I've been watching in our industry as the chatter has increasingly gone to not having a second passport, but having a second and third passport. Call it a plan B and C, if you will. Some people these days, when they see taxes going through the roof, they see people in their home country mistreating them and thinking that because they're successful as an investor or business person, that they're a criminal. Politicians are saying that. Sometimes their plan B is becoming their plan A, and their plan C is their plan B. As we say, 2 is 1, 1 is none. But people, I think, are increasingly looking, not just with Nomad Capitalists, but within the industry, at having a second and third citizenship. One example is you'll see a lot of Americans and Westerners in general in the last couple of years coming to us and getting citizenship by investment. It could be in the Caribbean, it could be Malta's EIN program, it could be others. And so let's just take the example of the Caribbean. If you are a U.S. or Canadian or Australian or German citizen, harder for Germans, but European citizen, and you have one of these Caribbean citizenships, that's a nice complementary passport. You've got a strong geopolitical country that probably has pretty high tax rates, perhaps is becoming more and more difficult, and you've got a country that's going to leave you alone. Is that enough, though, if that plan B needs to become the plan A? And so we probably want to look for something that's different. On the citizenship by investment market, certainly something that is different is Turkey. It's not part of the EU, it's not the US, it's a little bit of a different vibe. It is available by investment. I'm not saying that's the one, but certainly you can pair something in the Caribbean with Turkey if you just want to do total off-the-shelf programs. But the Caribbean plus something else could be a citizenship by descent, could be a paper residence, could be some other kind of fast-track program. I think that the Caribbean is fantastic and it's a great way to get your feet wet. But I think increasingly as we see challenges, I don't really see anyone having a problem with those passports, but if you want to be totally protected, I think that that additional step is going to be important. And it's been something that more and more people are asking for, saying, I love the tax-free in some of the Caribbean countries. I love that they don't bother me. I love that they're neutral. It's agnostic. I love it. What else can I get that's got a little bit more meat in the bones? And I'll add that to the passport I already have. 3 passports, not a bad thing to have. Now, let's talk about the challenges that I think are coming. And that is fewer options. Trend number 2. We're starting to see restrictions on nationality. Obviously, what's happening in Ukraine, very unfortunate. Russians are going to suffer. We're seeing Belarusians also going to suffer. So Portugal's Golden Visa program came out and said, no Russians, no Belarusians. There is unconfirmed chatter that perhaps people who already have that could be canceled. Your visa's canceled. That means if you're working towards citizenship, that residence permit goes away. So does your citizenship. So does the clock, basically. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether countries pull out the rug from underneath people on all the different residence programs. So if you're living there, is that different than an investor visa that doesn't require you to live there? That will be coming. But the question is, if they can do that, the UK was the first one to come out before the war started and said, hey, we're canceling the investor visa. We don't like that Russian oligarchs are bringing their money in. And so I think you're going to see it's going to start with certain nationalities. And so in some cases, they'll just say, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater. You had about 18% of UK investor visas, which were issued to Russian applicants. And so 82% weren't. Are we going to see possibly a tit for tat? Are we going to see countries that are pro-Russian, Eastern Europe, Central America, South America, say, hey, we don't want certain Westerners? I'm not so sure of that, but who knows what could happen. You're seeing a lot of that that's been unfolding. Are we going to see governments again, particularly in Europe, say, you know what, let's just cancel the whole thing. And that brings me to number 3, closures. The EU is pushing to get rid of all the programs. Now, they've been pushing in some cases for a long time. They've been saying, hey, the program in Malta, we don't approve of it. The program in Bulgaria, we don't approve. They did effectively take down Cyprus, although Cyprus helped them in doing that. Bulgaria, we're seeing them take a look at that. Malta says, hey, we don't want to give up our program because it's helped Malta. All the money they've raised has really dramatically helped them. It's a small country and it's been very beneficial. What is it that the politicians in the EU are saying? They're not trying to get rid of programs in Portugal that require you to live there, for example, or other European countries, freelancer visas, self-sufficient visas. They're not saying get rid of those. Those programs require you to live there 6, 7, 8, 9 months a year. So if you want to live in Europe, let me give you a piece of good news. If your goal is to live in a country in Europe, I think that you may be in better shape. Why? Because even though those programs often have a lower due diligence threshold, they're not targeted as much by the politicians where it's very in vogue right now to say, if you have money, if you bring money to a country, how dare you get any kind of special privileges? And that's not really how it works in Portugal. I mean, if you go to Portugal, they don't have a citizenship by investment program. You're waiting just as long as anyone else. And sometimes you're waiting longer in terms of the processing times, but you don't have to live there. There are some other things you should probably do to connect with the country. But the idea is that is out of vogue. It's not just Portugal. Other countries are pushing this as well. Again, the UK did it. Question is, next door, does Ireland do it next? And the language here to me is very concerning. We're doing it to prevent the oligarchs. I was talking to people, friends of mine in the industry, trade publications. How does this really stop anything? It's the excuse. In the UK, for example, they wanted to cancel the program for a long time. They'd been on, they'd been off. They had done different things, they'd changed it around, and ultimately, this was just waiting in the wings. This is like this is like you have a relationship, and they're waiting to drop something on you, and they wait for you to make the mistake, and then boom, there it is. That's what's going to happen with these programs, and you have an increasing number of, I think, politicians who will be open to reviewing this. Now, it's primarily going to be focused in Europe. What if you don't want to live in Europe? I think that one thing that you could also see is pressure being put on other countries. For example, pressure being put on Caribbean citizenship by investment countries, by the European Union, saying, hey, you have visa-free access to our country. The European Union already went and said Vanuatu citizens who have passports issued after 2015 would not be able to avail of visa-free travel. Obviously, that's a very significant marketing strategy for Caribbean countries. They don't even want you to talk about it in some cases now, where, hey, get this passport and you can come to Europe. Now, if you're an American getting a second citizenship, it's not really changing your travel profile because other than pandemic restrictions, you can go to Europe just as much as an American as you could as a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, for example. Their concern will be, hey, Russians can come in, Chinese can come in, whomever who doesn't have that access can come in without requesting a visa. Now, if you've been rejected for a visa, you're not going to be eligible for these programs. So there are some safeguards that they never seem to mention in their goal to get rid of these programs. But I think you could see the countries that are canceling the programs go and start to push other countries and say, we don't like this. I don't think it's necessarily going to be an issue of places where, again, you're going to go and live. Nor do I think it's going to be a huge issue in tiny, off-the-wall countries. Those are some of the ones that we focus on where, are they going to go to every little country and check like, hey, do you require people to live here for 6 months a year in order to be naturalized in 3 years? I'm not convinced they're going to do that. But anything where it's like, oh, yeah, Colombia, hey, invest $200,000 in property, you don't need to live there, I think that there could be some pushback on that. The fourth trend that I see coming is canceling citizenship and canceling passports. There was an inquiry, probably not, let me be clear, this is probably not the best example, but if the trend were to continue, it's concerning. Roman Abramovich, from one of the Russian oligarchs, has an inquiry into Portuguese citizenship, which he got, I believe, last year through his Sephardic Jewish ancestry. Now, the issue could be that they're saying, we don't know the details entirely, the issue could be they're saying, hey, maybe he didn't prove it, who knows. But the idea being they're looking at, and politicians, when they heard that, by the way, what seems like a pretty straightforward inquiry at this point, politicians were like, yeah, cancel it, get them out. They're talking now about citizenship by descent. Now, if someone lies, and I'm not suggesting that in this case this was what happened, but if someone lies to get citizenship by descent, that is certainly the case. You go to Moldova, people do these different scams with Romania, and there's all kinds of different citizenship by descent scams. that's the case. Obviously, I don't recommend that. It's not going to work out long run. You see people having their citizenship canceled all the time. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is now politicians are saying, if you're wealthy enough, now many of us probably aren't, we're not multi-billionaires and we're probably not in the spotlight. But could they come out and say, oh, we don't like you for some reason. You're from the wrong country, or you have too much money. You just rub us the wrong way. Politicians like Ana Gomez from Portugal, always pushing to cancel people's citizenship and golden visas. Now they're going and saying, even though if it's from your family, even if you have a familial connection, an ancestral tie, hey, not good enough. That's pretty disturbing, quite frankly. The idea that, hey, my grandparents were Italian, or my grandparents, I think Roman Abramovich has this situation, were Lithuanian. Lithuania, I have personal knowledge of this, people left. People had to leave. And so the idea was, hey, if the place, would have just continued as usual, people wouldn't have left. You would have been born in Lithuania, hence you'd be a Lithuanian citizen, come back and claim your citizenship. That's how these things work. They don't even want to keep that going in some fringe cases now. Is that a widespread issue? No. Is it concerning that it's being mentioned? It does concern me a little bit. The other issue is canceling passports. I mean, look at what's happening even in Western countries, Canada, Australia. They're comping and knocking on your door. Hey, we saw you posted something on Facebook. We don't like what you posted. Justin Trudeau taunted people during the protests in his country recently. Hey, we may not renew your passport. You may have trouble renewing your passport. You may have trouble traveling. Australia made similar comments. Boris Johnson in the UK wants to make it more difficult to get a passport. Courts in the US upheld that. Now, some of the reasons they're not giving you these passports are, you did something wrong. I happen to think, and I've gone on the record of saying this, I'm not going to be in favor of drug dealers, obviously. But to say that someone got out of jail in the UK and they want to travel, other countries may not want to take them in, but the UK locking them in, effectively jailing them in the country after their sentence was served, seems a little odd. But what you see is more rhetoric from Western politicians saying, hey, maybe you don't get a passport. You've seen other people, in, again, very extreme cases in the West saying, hey, let's just cancel citizenship and leave people stateless. Again, probably not the best example on leaving people stateless because you're talking about people who are on a battlefield somewhere. But canceling your passport, making it difficult or impossible for you to travel, they have started to talk about that. And so that's a difficult trend. And really, the fifth trend is higher taxes, more restrictions. As we mentioned at the beginning, you are not going to have an out from this if they make these programs more difficult. If you say, hey, listen, I'm an American and I'm in crypto, or I'm a trader, or I run a business, and I'm tired of living in the US. I'm tired of my country's position on this issue or that. I'm tired of all the regulations. They're coming out with all new kinds of reporting requirements. I just want to go and be free. I'm going to get this citizenship to the Caribbean. I can do that in a matter of months. I'm going to go live where I want. Now, why shouldn't people be able to choose their nationality if it's a voluntary transaction? But what happens if you see what I think will eventually come is countries saying, you know what, you got to live there. Some country will come and pressure to say, you have to live in our country for a while. And so now you can't get away from higher taxes. You can't get away from more restrictions. And so what if in Canada, as you see fringe politicians talking about, they decide to come out and tax you no matter where you live? You will be a Canadian in need of a second citizenship. And if you are not living in a country where you can get it, or if it takes years to get it, you're going to be stuck with whatever whims they come up with. And so, I've been saying for years, again, get your residence, get your citizenship. We even made an episode called The Ultimate Plan B. If you really just want to lock it all down, three citizenships, 2 residences, financially diversified assets, you are good to go. I think we're getting closer to a time where, rather than just the second passport, something in between that and the ultimate plan B will be needed. And I think that we're coming to a time when you're going to continue to see options going away. You've always seen options go away. You've seen options come back with higher prices, but there's been tons of options that have gone away because of various pressure. Don't do that, or we're not going to let you visit our country. Don't do that, or you can't join the EU. We don't like it. This is terrorist. Get rid of it. Don't take it. Don't sell it to those people. There are certain nationalities that can't get passports. Again, that's pretty much on the fringe. But I think that really now is the time to do this. You've seen the global events on multiple levels over the last 2 years. You don't have to spend the money to get citizenship by investment. You can go and live somewhere. You can check your family tree. You can get a paper residence. You can do a lot of things that are affordable. But if you can afford it and the time is more important to you than the money, golden visas, citizenship by investment, other fast-track programs are worth reviewing, because I believe anything that's published is going to become less and less doable. There may be some alternative options for certain people, but this is something that I believe these changes are coming. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.